having known you for a while, and doing a little research, I was getting my arms around everything that you do,
Oh.
and it's awfully wide and impressive.
Mhm.
You're an artist, musician, actor, advocate, journalist, Instagram rock star, community organizer. Like, what am I missing?
I was a former hurdler
Oh, all right.
in high school. Yeah. Once you do the hurdles, you never abandon the title.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, how would you do now?
you know what? That's the thing with hurdles is that they showed us a video in high school on like I don't know why they showed this to us, and it was about when to let go of you being an athlete.
Uh-huh.
And one of the videos was this guy at a reunion, and he started doing hurdles around the living room, and he trips and like busts his leg, and he's like, it's like there's a time when you should stop.
Welcome to Propellant, Minnesota. I'm your host, Matt Osterman, filmmaker, entrepreneur, and this time of year, amateur hockey dad. Have you ever met that person that seems to be good at everything they touch? Well, today's guest, Toussaint Morrison, seems to be really good at everything he touches. It includes music, singing, performance, acting, and activism, and he seems to be a wizard at social media as well. I hope you enjoy our conversation with Toussaint. All right, because you do so many things, how do you navigate all these different mediums? Like, how do you keep it all straight in your head?
I don't. And so what I have to do, or what I end up doing, is I make a list before I go to bed at night, like I did today. And so my list right now, I believe, if I have it on me, it says I have to email my PR person for these singles that I'm releasing, single songs. I'm writing a poem for a show that I have on Saturday. Today's Tuesday.
Yep.
We'll see how that works out. Design a handout for the show. That should be pretty easy. Arrange music vlogs. So there's like a thing where like a DP follows me around, and then I just have to arrange those for a certain channel. Find a DP for the show on Saturday. Lay out All Saints music video. Max and I kind of laid that out. And then 7, email DJ about, just lining up different things. So all of this stuff is at the forefront of my brain, but if I can write it down and take a look at it, then it can make sense to me. So that's like the immediate stuff. The long-term stuff, like goals and, what you're passionate about, and like calling, and like career and community, that is more of a general sense. So like the usual question I ask myself, and this will change over time, is am I serving a community, and if so, who, and then how? And so if I am in a position of serving, then that's the main focus. If I'm not, well, I need to kind of figure some things out. Okay, what am I doing here? What's going on? And if I'm not in a position of serving, then if I am in a position of serving, which I usually check myself, make sure I am, then it's okay. How is that happening, and who's that going towards? And that usually then delineates into different, buckets and whatnot from there. And so, yeah, that's the core of it. And then it somehow gets to a list written in sparkly marker.
Yeah. All right, 2 things based on that. So, list on paper. Do you find, is that accidental, or do you find like writing things down on paper and carrying it with you makes a difference?
It makes a difference for me. I know that as some people, I've had some friends actually go to, they've gone to rehab for anxiety, or gone to treatment for anxiety, and making lists is actually like, don't do that. So
really?
Yeah, they're like, get that crap out of here.
No kidding. Huh.
So I've heard it go both ways. It can be harmful to the person that's doing it, or it can be helpful. For me, and I heard about this, Matt, some people think in terms of words. Some people think in terms of pictures. So there's like another word that people like envision things. I can't see anything outside of pictures. My brain can maybe do words, doesn't really care for them. So when I write the words down on the paper, then I'm seeing it, and I'm like, I know I have to do that. Then I can start to go from point A to point B efficiently too. Because one of these things, if I start designing the handout for Saturday, and it takes me, I don't know, 5 hours because I've now gone into a font like sinkhole, so there's certain points where I'm like, you have up until this time to deal with this. After that, got to move on. When you're on the road with a band touring the country, the idea is you can think about yourself all you want, but comes a time where you have to focus on the entire group because you have to get back into that bus, leave Murfreesboro, North Carolina, and then go to Charlotte. And do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And so how do you serve everybody that's with you, and how do you operate in that small community and then fan out, like bigger things?
Yeah. Well, when you have a team, it's not about you, right?
No, it isn't.
You have to support them so they can support you, and vice versa.
Yeah, but there is this like irreducible like rascality that we have sometimes. That's like, I need it to be about me. And then you have to dive in and do the work on that. Well, why does it need to be about you? What, as I'm sure Justin Jones referred to, what inner child wounds are still, there that you're dealing with. So the allure to it being about you was always there. Oh, well, this could be about me. But then it, obviously the price that you pay is in community and authenticity and trust and stuff. So,
yeah. I mean, there's a reason you do what you do, right?
Yeah.
And in the middle of it is you.
Yeah.
Right? You can't avoid that.
No.
I think that's healthy. In terms of prioritizing all these different things, do you feel like it's a battle? Like some days maybe the music wins, other days,
Yeah. 100%. I mean, so the music, writing poetry and music is something I always want to do, but then messaging is something I always want to do as well. And so what I've done, messaging meaning, can I give you a piece of useful information that'll help you not win an argument, but go into a conversation? And even maybe just go into a bench at the park and sit there and think about it yourself. So if I were to tell you that most of the inner self-talk that we have is negative, and then here's why that's happening, that would help you, like for you to understand. And also you might not feel alone on a lot of that stuff. If I were to tell you, there's actually an advocacy group out there to essentially take up spots on a board of education to then ban books. How do you feel about that? So then you would be like, well, who's doing it and why? And maybe you have some interest in banning books or not. I don't know. But the point is that if you understood what's happening in that election or the function going into there, it would help you look at it differently and participate in it differently. So that type of messaging I'm always fascinated with.
And does that messaging, sorry to interrupt, does that messaging have a specific output, or does that hit everything that you're doing?
The specific output was to do a video a day. And that can even get problematic because that then goes back to that inner child thing. It's like, why do you have to have it every day? What is it? Is the information the most important part of it, or is it the frequency of it? And so then that battle then comes in. It's like, well, am I just saying something to say it or not? So that then, the root of that then turns into, what is the time I want to dedicate to messaging and useful information? And it's not something that's, I want to create an archive of information. It's, I want to create a legacy that people can look back on and say, oh, wow, when that was happening, this person said this and that was happening at that time. That's what I want to create, as opposed to contextually in a vacuum, that man said that at that time and that's it. So it does get to a point where it's like, what is it that you're saying? Is it really, like, is it more about what you're saying or the frequency of it? But I mean, I don't want to, there's certain things that I assign frequency to. For music and poetry, there's really no frequency to it. It's like, I'm just writing, do I want to put an album out? I don't know. How do we get into that?
I mean, when you get into it, discipline matters, but
yes,
in the genesis process, it kind of comes and goes.
Yeah, 100%. And then you want to think about the albums that you're putting out and the projects that you're putting out and what is the legacy of that. And that for me, for music and whatnot, it's, now I'm looking at it in a little bit differently, where it's like when I was with The Blend, with this band that, just hum-hoed to, like, toured around the country and just, it's what we did. We didn't, when it came time to make an album, I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess we got some songs we recorded, we wrote while on the road and played as an intro. Like, let's do that. Yeah. And then the album would come out and it would just be like it would be a piece of time that we were together. It wasn't really like, here's this project. It'd be like, hey, this is what we kind of did for the past 2 years.
Documenting,
Yeah.
something in the past. Yeah.
And that happened. I mean, and it was what it was. Now, in this part of my career, it's how do I make a project that is speaking to a certain like piece of my life, people in my life, overarching theme, and then going from there, as opposed to I wrote some stuff. Here it is, and that's okay too. I mean, there's not that somebody needs for me to say it's okay, but that intention is there too. It's like, this is the past stuff we made over the past 2 years. Here's a bag of holding. I'm gonna spill it out, But for this right now, when I do a social science club short, that'll probably come out one and a half every 2 days. For a social science club long form video, that's once a week. And so I then just get a topic that's about, being a kid in a interracial household raised by a single mother, how to give a speech, how to attend a protest, how to show up. Those things, that's a long form. That's something that my nephews are going to be able to look at, for the next 10 years, or my kids for the next 20. Then music and poetry, it's like, what do you want to actually like make an actual piece out of? And then that doesn't really have a timeline on it. It just does what it does at some point.
So are you thinking about the longevity of these pieces in any facet before you create them? Like,
yeah, the thing is that when you make a speech, or at least when I make a speech at an action, it's not that all gets abandoned. And I do that purposely, because it's not time for me to think about, what am I going to look like years from now making the speech?
Right.
It's not about me. It's about some young person that was killed or died while in a jail cell in Anoka, while in the care of law enforcement in the back seat of a car, while dying in obscurity, and like somehow the cops are like, we don't know what happened. And so then you have a family that has been absolutely decimated, emotionally by that happening. And it's not even in the whole process of, if there were a explainable scenario and situation where an atrocity happened, our minds can say, we can fill in the blanks and say, man, the somebody blew a red light and then it boom, boom. Whereas with state-sanctioned violence, which is a large realm that I work in with people in messaging, with state-sanctioned violence, there is a pernicious element created by the state to then say, you don't have any rights to this story. You also don't have any rights to mourn. And lastly, we actually blame you and for what happened. And so then we have this extremely victim blaming, backwards, upside down situation where if somebody doesn't say something, it's gonna just die in darkness, or this person's character gets assassinated and then it dies in darkness. So those moments, I'm not really like, oh, how is this gonna look? It's like the objective is to get information into people and the press to understand something happened here. It's not right, and the department should be held accountable. Now it's up to the press to figure out what that looks like. Yeah. So that's when making speeches, it's an entirely different kind of like approach.
Yeah, in a way, it's, you throw a pebble into a pond and you want the ripples to affect other people and create a larger wave, right?
Yeah.
Whereas maybe some of the bigger projects are you throwing a log into the pond, right? And they have their own thing to it. But you can't, especially with the advocacy stuff, you can't wait for the right moment either.
No.
You got to go and you got to speak.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. And if you're finessing over the language or the message itself, right? And it's going to be too late. And then, like you said, it dies in darkness.
Yeah. But there's interestingly, there's some things that you can speak on that are like, they call these topics, they either call them trending or evergreen. Topics that are like kind of timeless.
Yep.
Rappers getting locked up for their lyrics versus listen to this country song. Right. And that's a case study. It's just like, I think we can all benefit from looking at this. Like Johnny Cash said he killed a man in a law enforcement outfit and nobody batted an eyelash. We're like, yes, Johnny. Whereas like, so-and-so said this, and they're like, I think you should do life. And it's like, whoa, what is, and then, but it's not doing the legwork for the audience and saying, this is how you should think about this.
Yeah.
I can't believe you haven't been. It's like, hey, these are the two things that happen.
Do the work yourself. Yeah.
And what do you think about that?
Yeah.
And then boop, video end.
Mm-hmm.
And then undoubtedly people will think about it. It is what it is. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get people invested in the answer, right, they're going to come to it more truthfully, and then all of a sudden it's their idea versus somebody else's, and it makes more sense.
I was working with the late great Chase Cordy, and I was holding auditions in the Rarick Center basement. So we're in the basement. I had written my own play. There was a group of us that were tired of doing what we called old dead white men plays, and the options were just very slim to none, which you could audition for. So I was like, I'm going to write something and get a grant. So I got a grant and I wrote something great. And this white kid burst through the door. His name was Chase Cordy, and he's like, hey, they're having auditions, man. They need a black male for da-da-da-da-da. And like, Chase went after all of the like roles. Like he was like on backstage, but he was looking at everything. And so I was like, I don't know anything about this, but yeah, I'll go audition for it. So I auditioned for it, and it's a theater group called Jestic Theater Company, GTC, run by Michael Agnew. And Michael Agnew was influenced by Bilal, who did Invisible Theater, Theater of the Oppressed in Brazil. And what would happen in those theater forums is that you would create a scene in front of the community, and then the community could come up and alter the scene, how they think it should end, or how they think it should be addressed.
Wow.
So you put it into their hands. And part of the Latsi, or the part of the language that we used at the beginning was, I'm not here to tell you how to think. I'm here to challenge you and prompt some questions. Because what you think is really, we would travel around to freshman orientations around the country, put on a scene in front of everybody. It would turn into F you, no, F you. And then the moderator would come in and be like, hey guys, can we talk about this? And they'd be like, F you too. And then the moderator would be like, okay, you guys sure? And they're like, fine, we'll talk. So the characters on stage sit down in character in front of 400 to 500 to 600 freshmen at a university. We'd talk about it. And I'd turn to the audience and say, hey, what do you guys think of that? And they'd be like, well, I think so-and-so would have da-da-da-da. And I'd be like, well, tell them. And then I tell them, and you get into this big, like, but you also get into a eye-opening, culture-shifting, wisdom-informing conversation, a moment within 90 minutes. And the thing I took away from that was, if it gets to the point where you're telling somebody what to think, you have to do some real deep independent study on why you think somebody needs to think the way you think. However, if you can just give people information in a healthy environment, the environment may not always be healthy. The conversations could unravel into but if I can give you information, you can hear somebody else's experience. You can go forth in your day probably knowing more than you did before going into that. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why we need art. That's why we need truth tellers, because we get stuck in these ruts and we get blinders on, especially, those of us in privileged classes. Like you just go about your day doing this, right? Yeah. And then until somebody says something that you're like, oh, wait, I didn't know about that. Or really? That happens?
Yeah.
You don't know about it.
Yeah.
Or you maybe even subconsciously, don't pay attention because you don't need to. There aren't stakes involved.
No.
Right? So we need people like that and like you to remind us or to, shine a light on some of these things.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of it, and I said this at a rally, it was like the first day of the Derek Chauvin trial, and I said it in a speech. I said, I want your white children to know what justice is as well. And so it's not just me speaking out here on behalf of the community of color or the black community or whatever. It's like, I think everybody benefits from there being justice, or there being some means of restorative justice, because even folks that don't believe in the carceral system or government punishment would say there's a form of restorative justice that could happen here. But I want your kids to know, regardless of the amount of melanin in their skin or not, what justice is. And I think we all benefit from that when we can all engage in that. This idea of, I don't want to have that conversation because I don't have to have that conversation, is a form of exceptionalism that actually hurts you, and it doesn't help anybody. And so when people think that they're above the law, the exception to the rule, it sets them apart from other humans in the way that they then kind of crumble from the inside because they think that they're inherently above other humans, and that only hurts them. So, as you said, I think having people to just say something at the table and be like, it's like even a dinner table with the family. It's like if nobody's talking about a really, really pervasive bad thing that's happening in the group, it's gonna get worse.
Yeah,
way worse.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the murder of George Floyd and your involvement in that. I remember, obviously it was a crazy time for everybody.
Oh God.
Right in the middle of COVID, so the world was already upside down, and then that happens, and then we could get into the deeper levels, but let's talk about your involvement, because all of a sudden I started seeing you pop up kind of everywhere.
So
you kind of took on a leadership position. How did that come about?
So the word leadership, I don't
know if leadership is the right word, but it felt like you took on that mantle a little bit.
Well, so what I took the lead on is, at least for me, is hopefully, like, the lead was to essentially serve, but the idea was figuring out, okay, how can I serve? And so then I would get requests and calls on how I could serve, and that was like, great, cool. That totally eliminates me having to imagine or think about what this looks like. And then sometimes you just feel called to action. So for me, there was a point where I felt I really needed to say something publicly, like, who cares if it's recorded or whatever. And then that happened on, I believe, May 31st, that's Sunday, and at the Capitol. And I had interviewed Nikema Levy-Armstrong regarding the redistricting of school districts in Minneapolis. I forget, it's called, it was called something, but they were essentially moving all the money around. And so I had worked with Nikema. We had handed out masks at the Northside Cub Foods and whatnot, and helped out with that. And so I contacted her directly the night before, and the one thing that she said to me were the three probably most important words that I had ever heard throughout this whole time was embrace the uncertainty. And I did not immediately do that because I didn't know what that meant. But that Sunday, I got up and spoke, and I was standing amongst all the people that I work with now, and I don't even say work with, but just stand with now, and will show up and help out. In Kim Handy Jones, Monique Colors Doty, Jaylani, Muhammad Ibrahim. I mean, there were so many people that had been there before then and are still there after, and that was kind of the idea for me. So I got up and spoke, and then got up and spoke at other spots as well. And the idea then became, there's this amount of emotion I'm speaking with. And it comes from, obviously, getting up and speaking in front of people in the first place in theater or slam poetry or whatever it may be. However, this is a form that's obviously entirely unscripted, almost purely emotional sometimes. And then the idea became incumbent upon me to, okay, you better gather some information before you start opening your mouth. And was doing that anyways. I already had access and had some facts and understood things. And then gathering information that spoke specifically to what's happening could then help. It was almost in a way like a social science club, like mini video. It was like, I'm going to give you information right now that can help you. And then also addressing the media. And so one after one, when it kept happening, you had what happened with Dante Wright, a DP friend of mine. We did a deep dive and did a whole Good Morning Minneapolis episode on, Kim Potter and her history of the use of tasers, and found out that she was a trainer. Her husband taught taser gun use. And so we were able to give information to people on this. You should know this. This is really important before you sit down and start, really victim blaming. And so that for me then became the frame. If I'm going to get up and say something, let's have some information. And so that's been my expectation for myself going forward. And so what turned into like a very unprompted, unscripted, from the off the cuff type of delivery, then turned into, this happened to this young man in Anoka County Jail. We need you to come speak at the press conference. Cool, got you. And then you do the research and you show up. And that's kind of been my angle now. So throughout that time from May 2020 to I want to say March 2022, which isn't that long ago, there was a span of a few months where like that type of speaking and engagement wasn't happening, thankfully, because there was nobody that had been immediately killed by law enforcement. However, we'll get into the toll later on. But the idea is that, okay, if I'm going to continually do this, what does that look like? And it obviously can't be about me. It's got to be about the information. And so what is the information or the story that I can give to these people that can help them better understand what's going on?
And you've carried a lot of this work over onto, and you're going to have to educate me onto like Instagram, for example.
Yeah.
Right? So you do a ton of education on that front, and then YouTube as well.
Yeah.
But how do you kind of divide your attention between those, or how do you pick and choose what story to tell on each? You kind of have a specific brand for each one. Like, tell me a little bit about the methodology there.
So the method has been to end every video with a question at the end of it, and anybody can say to it, "Wow, you really slanted that, towards the right or the left or whatever." But the idea is that it's not. There's so much content out there that is just totally swinging one way or the other. There is a place for that. And I could be part of one of those places, but the idea of where I come from and the work that I began doing when I met Chase was the idea of, can I prompt something? Can I prompt a scenario to you, and then have you think about it? That's it. And some people, their minds are already made up, and they fly in the comments like, I can't da 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 da. And then somebody will come in and be like, you realize you just asked a question in this video?
Did you watch the video?
Yeah. So the methodology behind the videos is the same thing as the public speeches, which is prompting, is giving information and then prompting a question from it for the audience, for them to think about, as opposed to me telling you what you should do. And there's a place for that, and that's okay too. For me and my spirit and energy, I prefer to give information and then prompt a question. Give information, prompt a question, and then have people just go forward thinking about it maybe a little more critically than they did before. That's all.
If you move them 10%, that's a good job, right?
Yes, yeah. Or if they're even able to just look at they add a little piece to the picture that they or their blind spot just gets erased a little bit. Because we all have these huge blind spots. And like even going into the movement, I had huge blind spots with, what are you saying? And, like what is being baited right now from like, the mayor and, like the National Guard and all this stuff. How do you address it? And so for me, that it's like, yeah, you can shift it, but it's also, what are the blind spots people are operating within? And what are the blind spots that certain departments are hoping people are operating within? Because if you can open that up to people, then they can make a decision for themselves.
Yeah.
There's some people that are like, yeah, I know there's massive economic disparity here, and I don't want to do anything about it. Okay, then I'm not going to change your mind either.
Right.
And that's okay. But now we're going from misinformed ignorance to optional ignorance. Right. Great.
Yeah.
At least I know
where you stand.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's get a little inside baseball then. So on YouTube, you have like specific channels and shows. Yeah. And then Instagram seems a little bit more freeform.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that strategic?
Oh, not at all. What happened was I was making long form videos. So Max and I would team up. We'd make long form videos. Max Schober. Yeah. We'd team up and we would make 15 long form videos in February or March of 2020. And then, it was like, I'm a vegetarian, or, just like simple stuff. And I was just kind of exploring like, what is this whole world of YouTube like talking, to get, and like, who even cares what I have to say? And there became a point where I was really just riffing and like doing whatever. And now, and so then when the uprising started, the subject matter changed drastically, and it was like, hey, you know, like what is the whitewashing that's occurring in the media? Why is the mayor saying there's a curfew? All this stuff. What does it mean to have the National Guard in your backyard? And all this stuff. How do you feel about that? And so, but that wasn't sustainable, because you want to be in a state of war all the time. Good luck. Your cortisol levels are going to be through the roof. And so, all that being said, the methodology then became, how can I provide information for people? And that was it. Then things tampered down. You know, Kim Potter got arrested. Chauvin got convicted. And, you know, the expectation was, well, what do you talk about now? And it wasn't necessarily that. That was the pivot. Not even really pivot. That was just kind of like a retransformation of, well, how do I make a video for Matt as much as for so and so, you know, in Kentucky that's going through a riot right now? Was something that's useful. You know, and it's just a small talking piece. So it's not as, you know, pushing it in your face as much as it is, hey, here's a question. And so that then prompted the Social Science Club. And so that the Social Science Club are like short-term videos and short form and long form videos that are just informational. The long form are a little more deep diving into the idea of, this is my life and my experience with it. It's personal to me. And the short form ones are, hey, this happened. This publication said this. That person said that. What do you think? And so that methodology has been really formulaically distilled down to a certain thing. With on-site public media, what was already there was Good Morning Minneapolis, which was like a satirical approach to local politics and global politics. And that's been the same the whole time. If you go back and watch the first episode, you'll literally see me reading a friggin' phone and being like, and then, you know, making smarmy jokes like to the side, which is what still happens, but now we have a teleprompter. And it's a little bit different, and we quote things, there's graphics, and there's like sound effects and all this stuff. And so that has gotten better, but it's just the same thing. The Social Science Club, what will happen to that is there's going to be a website dedicated to it. Each of the videos will have a transcript so people can read. There'll be some links that people can go to.
Learn more.
Yes. And it decenters it from me. And it's just like, here is words and information. Go forth. The video's there, but the information is here too.
Yeah.
And that'll go solely on On-Site Public Media's website, and it'll just turn into an archive information hub or a library, if you will. I've always envisioned the information being like a public library, Matt.
Bizarre. I mean, let's just get rid of the libraries. Let's ban all the books. We don't need those. I mean,
dog, once you get into Moms for
those?
Liberty, deep hole, deep dive. Some of this stuff, I'm like, I can't talk about all of this within 60 seconds.
It's too much. The door wasn't cracked open; it was blew the fuck open. And then, now you're fighting battles on 8 different fronts simultaneously.
Dude, tell that to Max Schoberg. When it gets into the trenches, and I'm like, Max. And then he's like, what? And he's like looking at his phone, like he's like on opensecrets.org, going into secret packs that go from like one country to another. And I'm like, we got to pull this back, brother. Let's get to the...
Yeah. Knowing Max, for the rest of you, a great DP in town, director of photography, super talented, but he can spiral and he can go deep on things pretty quickly.
And his brain is he has such a beautiful mind, because he gets to like the information that's at the bedrock. And it's like, oh, how do we get from there to here now? And then that's when really, really great reporting and stories and, you know, delineation occurs.
Yeah. That slight angle, that unique viewpoint that cracks it open. That's not just the talking points, right? Where it's like, here's a script that all the newscasters have to read.
Yeah. And that to me is interesting too. Like, you get a better view at media and how they operate. Like, we work in film. They're technically in film too. And it is a very, very specific mode of film. Like, I'm continually like fascinated by major media. And major media, I mean that in the sense of they run commercials and get money for it, you know? I'm blown away at like
The machine?
The machine. The machine of it all. Let alone the writer's room. That stuff, like, not enough blood in that one. We need something with a little more carnage. What do you got for me? It's just like, what? This is a useful story for people. Just because it didn't bleed, it doesn't lead. Like what?
I know. It's crazy. Speaking of media,
Yes.
you kind of had a public split with TBT PBS.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating to watch at the time.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about the genesis of that and how it went down?
I attended one of auditioning at this day and age. It's even like distilled down now. You know, you send in your audition tape. It's very specific. But then there are some things where the audition is like, you know, we need you to dance in front of a camera for this like small like campaign they're gonna sell like pop rocks, like I don't know, like, and you're doing the pop rock dance. Like,
how big is that check? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then for this one for TPT, like I got a email from a person I never heard of, and they said, we want to bring you down, and we want you to read from a teleprompter, then interview somebody, and then talk to a camera and give us a bio. And in my mind, I'm like, you want my black ass to come all the way out there and do all these things for no money. And so
sign me up. Yeah.
But that's where my mind went, right? But then I'm like, yeah, you know, it's an audition. It's going to be fun.
Playing the game, yep.
If everybody has that initial, like, intrusive thought of, like, you want me to do what? For free? Like, you know, like, off the bat. So I was like, okay, I guess we'll. And, like, I wrote the teleprompter thing, I think, too. Or, like, it was so weird.
Well, the industry's weird because you never know where things going to lead either. So you gotta take chances sometimes. You got to put yourself out there.
A reality TV show audition was more clear than what they were doing there. And again, this is no indictment to them. It just was weird. And so I walked in, I was like, what is this for? And they're like, oh, we can't really talk about the project, you know. And I'm like, that, for me, straight up, dog, come on now, man. Like, you gonna bring me in here, not tell me what the show about, have me. So, and it was 13 people that they brought in. Most of them were like just folks of color and folks from the LGBTQIA plus community. And I was like, okay, what is this program again? We did it. And at the end of it, they're like, hey, they want to do the whole show with just you as the host. And I was like, the host of what?
Right.
What are we doing? And they're like, oh, it's called America from Scratch. And, you know, you prompt a question. You say, if we made America from scratch today, would we have state lines? And it was just prompting questions about the construction of the United States. Now, the issue is that now if you want to get to the bedrock of it, you got to talk about enslaved labor and genocide and as chattel slavery. I mean, all of that stuff. If you can't get at that, then we're definitely getting at some questions that are going to be a support group for kind of white comfort.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know it at the time. I was just like, oh man, this is really cool to be with PBS, Digital Studios, TPT. And so we did the show. Everybody there was fairly cool. Like they were cool people. It was very quiet in the room. There wasn't a lot of talking. You didn't really hear anybody laugh, or you pass by somebody, you gotta, and they're like, and it felt like a Stephen King movie in the making, or like the first episode of Goosebumps. Like
Something
it was like
was off.
Something's gonna happen.
Yeah, right.
But I don't want it to be me. And it was the vibe in the building. Although there were some amazing people there, I met some really dope folks there. Anyways, you do the show, wrap up, great. They put it on YouTube, cool. And then you're like, hey, we don't know when things are gonna happen again, but let us know. And I was like, how do you let me know? I don't even know what's happening here. I just saw there's a few episodes that went up about it, and we did a first season of America from Scratch. Cool. I had nothing to do with the writing, and that was it. I was just a face, talking head. Cool. And then season 2 happens. They only get half a season. Then they hire me on to host a forum. Now, my background, having 17 years of hosting forums, I'm going to ask questions that are just literally there. The forum was about a white woman who made a documentary called Education Behind Bars, I believe. And it was about all these inmates getting MIT-level educations while in prison and through this program. And then they get out and they lower recidivism. Recidivism is where somebody gets out of prison, does something, goes back into it. They want to lower that rate. And so I did the forum. And so what happened was I just asked a question. I said to the director of the film, they show a little bit of a snippet of it, and I said, so in this snippet, what I'm seeing is nearly all people of color, if not all black men, behind bars getting this education, and then 95% of the people teaching them are white, and all the CEOs are white in this film that we're seeing here. What do you think the impact of that is by showing that and not speaking on, or not saying anything about it? Crickets in the room, and this is entirely filled forum, and like she's up there, and all these people that I presume are multimillionaires. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's like you would think that with all this wealth and all this background and research, you would have prepared for a question like that. And I guess it doesn't take money to prepare yourself for a question like that, but they just didn't have an answer. And then
hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, and then the governor's wife comes up, and the next lot of people, and she addresses it kind of. And I said, well, she said this is a money issue, a transportation issue, education issue, and then a black person in the audience was like, it's a race issue. And then the governor's wife was like, well, that was implied. And I'm just like watching this meltdown, and I'm like, so weird, man. I've been at colleges where, kids can like address this. These are adults that are in extremely powerful positions of political and economic power.
What year was that? Do you remember?
That was 2019.
2019.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and she was like, that was implied. And then I hear booing and hissing from the audience, and I'm like, you don't even need me here to have this happening. So I said, what do you mean by implied, Miss Walls? And she goes off. Anyways, this whole debacle occurs where a group of people show a piece that has racial disparity tied to it, the school to prison pipeline tied to it, and they don't address it. And then it becomes a public thing because all the tapes from that got destroyed because I wanted to use it for my reel because I got a call from my agent that said, hey, do you have any footage of you hosting a forum? I was like, yes, I do. And I called TPT, and they're like, yeah, we don't have those. And I'm like, wait, what do you...
VCR ate them. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. And so that happened, and then like I get right on time, I get a call from a reporter from NPR, and he's like, Toussaint, I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened with that forum. And I was like, well, I can't really show you anything because the tapes are gone. And he's like, why? And I was like, because you call them, girl. Like, I don't know what's going on. I was like, I don't know what the flip is happening right now.
Active conspiracy that we're in right now?
Yeah. But anyway, so that goes massively public. I sit down with TPT staff. They're like, hey, we're sorry about this. I'm like, it is what it is. I don't even know what's happening. So then, and I got coached by a guy from Channel 5 or some channel at the time who said, hey, you should make a public statement about this. I was like, okay. And I just wrote it down and then sent it to my Instagram. And then that went to like, all over the place. Anyways, so then George Floyd gets murdered by the police, May 25th. The TPT doesn't say anything for a week. I was like, that's weird because the distillery has said something and like local companies have said something before you. And they're like, hey, we're not a news agency. I'm like, but you're a media hub. What do you mean this whole thing? Like, we're not a news agency. We're nonpartisan. Like, if you're nonpartisan, then you can say something very just, flat about this. Then that month, I made some videos saying, they need to say something. And then they didn't. And then I got a call from a producer saying, hey, we saw you speaking at the Capitol. We have to rethink about your involvement. And I was like, no, that's fine. I don't want to be involved. And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, look, if that's even a question, I'm out. Like, and there's somebody for this job, where they can have that be a question. If you were to enter any relationship and somebody were to be like, I got to think about this whole Black Lives Matter thing, I'd be like, oh, yeah, cool. You go think about that on your own. I will not be a part of this situation. That's just how that was. And so I backed out, made a video saying, look, I'm not going to be working with these people anymore. You won't see me here, and here's the reason why. And that was it. And then they made a statement that said rebuild, regenerate, or something that was like not implicating that a black man had just been murdered by the cops, like in a gruesome way for over 9 minutes.
Talk around it.
Not even talk around it, totally just like talk away from it. Like, just, we should rebuild our communities. Girl, what? Like, there was just so much wrong with it. And the thing that what I then imagined then was, and this goes into everything that we do, can you address something that feels uncomfortable, that may challenge somebody in what they're thinking, but at the end of it, have everybody build and construct from. Because what is the price of us not talking about it? What is the price of us dismissing it? What is the price of us subjectively glossing over it? That price, when it becomes too high for a community, will then address it. And when we see companies like the Washington football team, they knew that it was going to hit their pockets. We got to change the name. At what point does it become an issue where you are going to change because you know it's going to hit your pockets? If your police cultural if the culture in your police department is so poor, so racially violent, so sexist, so anti-LGBTQIA+, that the DOJ's got to come through and lay down a plan for you, that's a problem. And it's going to affect your pockets. And so, unfortunately, not a lot of people change until it affects their pockets. The question is, what changes can occur before that happens? If you were ready for that, what would that have looked like? So that's kind of the community and future I envision for a lot of institutions and communities that they affect.
Are we in a better place in terms of at least being open and having honest communication?
I think you have probably a community that is more knowledgeable and educated than before. I know that I'm more knowledgeable and educated than before. Understanding of local politics, consent decrees, how encampments and houselessness is addressed, and how many, the unsheltered community, what's happening here, the education, prison, school to prison pipeline, the treatment in prisons. Like, I'm far more vastly educated on that than I was before. And now the question is, as a point of action, what are you going to do about it? And so for me, it's continually prompting questions and understanding that there are a fleet of people out there that are going to go into, that are going to become economists.
Economists.
Economists. Lawyers, civically engaged people in city hall, political leaders, elected officials, that will then hopefully take that piece of information and do better with it.
They'll have the levers of power at some point, right?
Yeah.
They're a little more educated. Their eyes are more open.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Or they'll be able to hold their elected officials more accountable and be like, hey, what's going on?
In small ways, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And the small ways we know add up to the big ways, because a lot of this is insidious and it's,
Oh, yeah.
It's under the dark of night, or not even on purpose. It's just the layers of complexity plus time equals bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Do you think it's in a better place? Do you think it's different, or what do you think?
I feel like I am.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like I was, fairly progressive prior to,
Mm-hmm.
but it opened my eyes.
Yeah.
So I guess if our, community's a house, like, we open the blinds.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
but there's still
100%.
some cracks in the foundation that need to be
Oh, yeah.
taken care of. But at
Yeah.
least we can look outside now and feel like we can see the truth a little bit easier.
Yeah. Or how we got here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more blinds unopened. There's a lot more hidden rooms that we don't know about, and hopefully those will open at some point.
There might be a doomsday prep, a barracks, underground, bunker.
You want to know the person that has the keys to that room.
Yeah.
Sure.
Got to figure that out.
Yeah, totally.
I got asked to do a gig for you. Did you ever work on any of these like documentary gigs in town? I want to say This Is It, but that's not it. I Was There, or
oh yeah, no, I haven't.
Okay, so for the people that are watching, Minnesota has gotten a fair amount of what do you call them?
Recreations.
Recreation. It's got a fair amount of recreation stuff, and so you have to find people that fit the bill. That when that happened, how that happened, where it happened, and I got called to play a specific ethnicity that I am not, and I was like,
yeah,
and the price was good. Price was looking real good, Matt, and I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
And it was with a bunch of people that I love and trust, but they're getting the call from, a way bigger studio. They're not calling the shots or writing it.
Yeah.
They're just trying to put it together and cast it, and they having some problems finding the demographic and fitting the budget.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are jobs where I'm like, no, I won't be doing that today.
What is your take on, this is a hot topic within the acting and filmmaking and stage community too,
Yeah.
playing outside of type, or playing a race that you're not, or playing a sexuality or gender that you're not,
Yeah.
where there's a whole bunch of actors are saying, well, I'm an actor, right? This is the job.
Yeah.
And then other folks are saying, well, you're taking jobs away from the people that are actually representing that. It's a complicated issue. I don't even know where I stand.
Yeah.
But do you have any strong opinions on it?
What was it? Scarlett Johansson. She was playing a character in Ghost in the Machine that was
Ghost in the Shell?
Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
Ghost in the Shell. Why did I say Ghost in the Machine?
That was one of my movies.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Ghost in the Shell was
like anime style.
Yeah. And Scarlett Johansson said, well, before you start throwing like shade on me, she didn't say it verbatim. She said, you should probably go talk to this person, this person, this person, this person. She goes down the line of all these people that have played outside their demographic. And I was like, and I was like, she has a point. There is some deflection going on. And then there's something to be said about everything that's happening. And for me, yeah, there's a point where, I think Angelina Jolie playing a woman of color, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I probably won't go see that movie. Or Bradley Cooper is under fire for playing for having a nose prosthetic.
Yep.
Zoe Saldana was under fire for the nose prosthetic on playing I forget the singer. It's not coming to me. But that has a place, and that has a place to be addressed. The question then is, because it's engaging in theatricality, at what point is it misrepresenting a demographic and what point is it going outside the realms of authenticity to that story? I don't know, because every story is different. And there was a comedian that said, so would you like somebody to play a murderer that's murdered people before? And I was like, damn, man, I gotta go to the library on this one. I don't know. I don't, because at what point? Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm not going to, if I don't agree with the way a movie has cast authentically, I just won't go see it. Right. If somebody's really like, damn it, Nick Fury has always been white in all of the cards and the comic books I have. I will protest this right now. Okay, fine, go ahead. There was a black Nick Fury in one of the the versions of it, but
it's canon. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, like intention these days. You can go into a project with good intention.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter in the end. It's all about the finished product, and then internet pitchworks come out one way or the other, right? So we took care of everybody. We had the best of intentions. Didn't.
Yeah. Well, the product right now is.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's a conversation that we're all having, and probably will continually have in perpetuity as we figure out how to.
As we should.
Yeah, that's part of living in a society. That's why you live next to people.
Yeah.
To work out and or embrace your differences, because that's what life's all about, I think, right? That's that's the cool part. If we're all the same, or if we all had the same opinions, how boring would this be?
Oh, 100%. So with intentions and evolving over time, what would you say to your filmmaking self 10 years ago, regarding intention? Hey, buddy, this is what we've learned, or at least what I've learned in this past decade.
Yeah, I can give you an example. So I did a movie called 400 Days about a bunch of, fake astronauts that go on a simulated mission to a distant planet.
Mm-hmm.
And went into it knowing hey, I want this movie to reflect the world we live in. It has to be a diverse cast.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this was we had stars in the movie and stuff and a little bit of a budget, and they expected us to have bankable actors in it.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up casting it, and casting's a messy process. And you make an offer, you have to wait a month for a no. Damn. Sometimes it's crazy.
Okay.
Or you get a yes, it turns into no that turns into a yes. It's incredibly messy, and there's no one right way to do it. So we went into it, wanting to cast, reflecting the world we live in, and made a bunch of offers to a wide swath of folks. The cast we ended up with, predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until we were filming, basically, because you don't know exactly who you end up with.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fuck, what do you do at this point?
Oh, these other actors said no.
Yeah.
Here's what we got.
I got turned down by 6 black actors.
Okay.
Just did, because they didn't want to be in the movie.
Damn.
Or didn't pay enough, or wasn't their vibe, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I got turned down by at least as many white actors. So
fair enough.
You get turned down by a lot of the stars.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Part of the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a movie comes out, does well, but I'm at a screening in town, and somebody asked me the question, like, you know, they said it in an aggressive way, but I was not cool about it. I kind of like saw red because I'm like, fuck, we had every intention to do this the right way. They don't know that. They don't care.
They don't care.
And nor they probably shouldn't, because it's about the end product.
Yeah.
You know, so going through that, and most people didn't care, and most people know that process is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I'm like, oh, fuck, intentions don't matter.
Doesn't matter.
One
Yeah.
bit, you know,
Yeah.
goodwill, you know, thoughts and prayers
Yeah.
don't matter. It's all about the finished product. So that's one lesson I learned, where I should have fought harder on that front.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can all get better, I think.
Yeah, we can always get better.
Yeah.
It's the question of, do we want to get better? You know, that's really, and what is the price of not getting better?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's really going down?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the next level of understanding the big picture, hearing somebody out, doing a little more research on something where you've been like, and it might not even be resistant. You might just be like, God, I have already read up on astronauts for so long. Like,
Every day. I mean, if you're open,
yeah,
you're going to get that every single day.
yeah.
I consume an unhealthy amount of media.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
partially, I don't know why, and maybe I should go on a media diet.
Yeah, take a little break. Go to Grand Marais.
Yeah. I try to take everything in, absorb it, and contextualize it for myself, so I can look at the world with a broader viewpoint.
Yeah.
Not perfect, and like you said, I'm the product of, you know, the 5 people that I hang around with the most.
Yeah, and not to say that those people are bad, but I'm saying, like, we get into this thing where, like, oh man, like, my community is me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's part of the reason podcast.
Right?
Yeah,
there you go. Yeah,
it's to have these conversations.
Hello.
And it's just an excuse for me to learn.
Yeah.
You know, funny enough too, if you look at the thumbnails on our podcast, we've had now, you're the 7th guest. We've had 1 female.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I have to look at this.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh, that's a problem. Both like internally for me, because I like, that's stupid. I'm missing out on half of the conversations I could have. I've had a couple cancellations. I've had a couple people say like, 2 weeks from now, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And so you put it out there, and I know I'm going to get comments of like, why is it all dudes?
Yeah, you know, are there any non-binary people, any trans people? You know, like, you get
yes.
like all the folks in. And the thing is that the great thing about this project is that it's not finite.
Yeah.
You just keep going. Yeah.
I know. It'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk about the local Minnesota art scene.
Yeah.
Music, film. What can we do better?
What we can do better for film.
It's a big question.
Yeah, but I think what we can do better for film off the bat is there's these echelons of these 2 worlds that I see happening. There's when you pull up to a Best Buy gig or like a big corporate gig, and you see a certain demographic of director. Then you go to a startup or a student film or a independent film, and the director could be anybody. And it's not to put it solely on the demographic of the director. You will see the crew be more colorful as well in these latter projects I said. However, these corporate projects, it is almost like the prerequisite is, are you above 45? Are you white? And are you male? And so,
no, I get it. Trust me.
And so for me, I'm like, that's one thing. That's just off the bat, off the get. And that, I don't know who's in charge of that or how that works out, is what it is. 2 would be supporting these events that are called the Mixer that Leonard Cersei's been doing. I had no clue what they were off the bat. And I would say any support of that, or just showing up there, even for like 15 minutes, just to like say hi to people, get a bite to eat, and get out. It starts to contribute to this community being everybody's community.
If I can add on, Minnesota Women in Film and Television. Too.
Yeah, Minwif. Yeah, Minwif as well. Yeah,
they're doing great work on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. Molly Worry and all those folks. I mean, they do a lot of great stuff. And I think those two things that can be supported more and navigated more by people outside of those communities, just to be like, how can I support? And then the last one would be, and this is just the people that hold film festivals within the metro area, you can be more giving with your tickets. There are way too many empty theaters. There are way too many high prices that I see keep people out, or even people that are part of the film, that I think that you can invite those people into those spaces. You have more than enough sponsor money. You gonna be all right. Everybody's gonna be okay. And nobody's gonna be hurting for money at the end. And if you are, then maybe you're doing the festival for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
Because if there is a great film playing and there's nobody inside the theater to see it, who are you reaching out to? Who are your prices for? And if this is an economic thing, well, then let's talk about some sponsors that we can maybe get to fill in those monetary, gaps. So for me, it's how can we serve the community? And if you're not serving everybody, or you're not giving everybody like an equal shot, then you're only serving a certain amount of people. And so I think those spaces can open up in a way. The Mixer had a friggin' local black barbecue pull up with their barbecue and serve everybody. Come on. I mean, if that can happen for that specific thing on like a kind of a weirdly cold day in summer, I think any film festival can do it. I mean, you can make it happen. Yeah. We're doing this thing after the show on Saturday. There's a woman that comes to the bars to sell burritos, and I'm like, I want everybody to eat at the bar afterwards. This bar doesn't serve food. Well, let's call homegirl and bring these burritos in. We're getting a big order. But it's not just like, yes, look what I did. I fed everybody. It's like, no, dude, you helped out the local homie. Like, get some money too and come through. Like, that's the move. Like, because the whole point is like at the Mixer, I saw several young black men who were like, yes, I'd like to be a PA. And then I want to direct. And I'm like, hell yeah. And then I ended up seeing them at more projects.
Yeah.
And now they're on their way. Started to GoFundMe. They're doing their thing. Okay, girl, go for it. You're seeing people climb a ladder right in front of us. So I think that's really important. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a conversation with Jayton from Twin Cities Film Fest.
Yeah.
Well, he was on the podcast, but I talked to him at the festival. And I went to a screening of Downtown Owl, which was shot here.
Yeah. Was it Ed what?
Ed Harris was in
Ed
it.
Harris. I want to say Ed Burns, but it's not a person.
Yeah, Hamish Linklater, Lily Robb, and a ton of local. Yeah. A ton of local talent, and mostly behind the camera is all local folks. So I went to it expecting to see a lot of friendly faces, people I knew. Hardly any crew members were there.
Yeah.
What the hell? So I was talking to people afterwards, and I'm like, oh, because they have to pay for a ticket.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jayton. I'm like, is that right? He's like, shit, no, it's not. Next year we're gonna give away tickets. So put you on the spot, Jayton.
Yeah.
I mean, and that happens on every level, right? So you look at like corporate finance.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people there that can move up the ladder took unpaid internships. Well, who has the luxury to take an unpaid internship except somebody that's coming from, some wealthy families, right? So we have to find those ways to remove those barriers because they're stupid, and the world is missing out on so much because people are protecting their, some stupid legacy. In your career, are there any tools, technology, any books, anything that has made your life easier?
Captions app. It's actually scary. Some guy online named Alex Hormozy, multimillionaire, talks about self-betterment, working out, yada, yada, yada. He had these captions, and I was like, wow, these captions really fly. I want to use these. And so I downloaded it, and I was resistant at first. I kind of got the thing where I was like, I gotta learn this. Come on. But then I started learning it and, putting pictures in, all this stuff, and then you apply the sound effect that goes when the picture comes in. It was like one thing. At one point, a year ago, I've been using this captions app for like a year. The AI in it, Matt, it's like I have a personal relationship with it now. It's scary, dog. I want to get it Christmas presents. It's like we work together. Like I'm like, Max, have you met captions app? Is it? It's not a human, huh? That thing has changed so much for me.
In the office, we use ChatGPT quite a bit.
ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Okay.
For marketing work and stuff like
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
would never use it for film. That
No.
makes me want to vomit. But for marketing work, web stuff,
Yeah.
but we use it so much, we started calling it Brian. Just because it was like our coworker. Like, let's go ask Brian. Or
my God.
maybe Brian can, synthesize this better than we can.
Yeah.
And it's so early too. It's gonna get freaky.
Yeah, we're just like in like the initial like ascent. It's gonna start to like go up exponentially.
I don't know if we're ready. But,
yeah.
So caption app, it literally does captions on short form videos.
Yeah, but then it also the pictures it can put in. It puts the picture at the top and scrolls it across. There's so many things. It transcripts everything. There's just a lot that it does. That's really amazing. So that's changed how I perceive messaging. And so there's that. And then there are delegating out to other editors and just getting a well-versed Rolodex of editors and understanding what they want to do more than what you want to do. Well, maybe they don't want to edit it like that. And that's why it's a little bit begrudging. And, it's like, okay, well, then what do homies like to work on? Let's leverage out what you really prefer to do, as opposed to me throwing you some cutting up a press conference or a rally action and you being like, oh God, this again. So
you could probably feel the boredom, right?
Yeah,
if they do
100%.
something you wanna do.
Yeah, so we got a specific editor for Good Morning Minneapolis. We love making funny, satirical stuff and just keep it moving. And they add in stuff that I don't even ask them to add in, and it's so great. So really working with people based on what their strengths as opposed to what you want. And the idea is that project's going to be best at the end of the day with all of you loving the process of it. And then the last thing that's really helped me out is listening to the DP that I work with. And so sometimes I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah. No, we'll just shoot from the hip. No, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And then it's just me just kind of like really like just muting everything that they just friggin' said.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, no wonder nobody's happy like while we're filming this, or there's so much pushback. And so what happened then was, a lot of pre-production meetings and like making the time for it, shutting up and listening, storyboarding, letting somebody else storyboard. And like really, I got it in my head what I'm going to do. That doesn't mean that everybody else has the same vision. Well, you should probably work at getting that same vision and everybody else on board at the same time before you start, really cooking in and out on like telling people what time it is. And so that's become a huge advantage for me, or has helped a lot in the process of
empowering your collaborators to bring their A game or bring something special that you didn't see, right? And then they just make it better.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Way better.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Who locally, whether it's a restaurant or musician or an artist or a small business, who has either exceeded your expectations, or who do you feel like everyone needs to know about?
Everyone needs to know about. I would say David J. Buchanan. I would say everybody should know about David J. Buchanan. He as a director changed the way that I see myself in film, like just as an actor in the business of it. I came in with so many preconceived notions and ideas of the way it should be in whatever. David just cracked the mold, just blew up everything. And I was like, whoa, you mean, and I didn't even see it coming. Like, it just, the way he operated Black in Minneapolis, the way he operated rideshare, like it changed everything. And like his work ethic and discipline, like just, I've never seen anything like it. And then outside of that, someone who's been a giant influence has been Dave Palm. As a gaffer, as a lighter, as an all-around film person, he is ultimately who I kind of hold as the standard of serving people in an artistic way. He is always, he'll chop it up a little bit and then be like, all right, how can we get this shot? And I'm like, damn, Dave, okay, I love that. Because a lot of people will get wrapped up in the socialness of it. And there's a time for it afterwards. But Dave is just there all the time as a conduit for your creative process. And I just haven't, that energy has been so important to me to understand and tap back into, like, and that goes into like me being like an activist as well. I will pull up to a press conference and then like the leader of the press conference, they'll talk to me and be like, what is it that you want to have happen here? Like, I have my information. What are you hoping like that the soundbite is? Like, how can we work this out? As opposed to, I got a speech and I'm going to say it, you know? So I just go by like the book of Dave Palm, you know, and that guy just, you know, above and beyond.
When you can like align goals.
Yeah.
Right? When everyone is moving in the same direction.
Yes.
On the same page.
If I were to shout out just a space that does commerce in the city, I would say Francis Burger. One of the best vegan burgers you'll ever have in your life.
I don't know if I know of them.
Right on Central Avenue. You get that Juicy Lucy burger with the chicken nuggets. It's a wrap. It's all good. You'll be fine. And then the other thing I would shout out is Third Space in Uptown.
I've heard of that, but yeah, what is that?
So Aaron, all these baristas used to work at a space on Lake and Bryant. Space closed down, and then lo and behold, there was the space that had turned into a coffee shop. February of 2020.
Oh, good time.
Called Youngblood, and they got a coffee shop in Fargo, North Dakota. They got a coffee shop in North Dakota, near one of the universities. Obviously, it shut down. Aaron and the crew of baristas from the coffee shop that shut down swoop in and make Third Space, and it's just incredible. They hold community forums there. They have got great vegan dishes there as well, and they just have like good product, and like they're just a solid space. And we filmed out of there, and they were like, "Yeah, we're closed on Mondays. Come through." And I was like, "Okay," it was great.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
We love people like that.
Yeah.
Have you heard the kind of the idea behind Third Spaces?
Yes, I have. Okay, you explain it to me. What is it again?
Well, the idea is like you have home, you have work, or you have home and school.
Yeah.
Historically, humans have had a third space to go to.
Yeah.
But we've kind of lost a little bit of that right now. We're a third space where you can go and be part of a community.
Yeah.
And reflect or talk or and the coffee shop is a perfect place for that, especially because it sounds like it's so community minded.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just need more third spaces.
This is nice.
To end, do you want to tell people where they can find you online, where they can look you up?
So even this has been a process because there's so many places you can find people's content. So for me, the two spaces that I really break it down to, one is you can go to youtube.com/Toussaint Morrison. And if you want to support the things there and get all the behind the scenes, cool, crazy stuff, you can go to patreon.com/Toussaint Morrison. And those are the two places. You're going to get everything in both those spots. More in Patreon, more different more stuff in Patreon, and you'll get a lot more stuff at the YouTube. So yeah, those two places.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. This was awesome. I learned a ton. I had a blast.
Yeah.
And maybe we can do it again.
All right. Appreciate you, Matt.
Thank you.
Cheers.